What's up?
It's Kendall
and John,
and we are the Antonellis of Antonelli's Cheese Shop in Austin, Texas.
And we are thrilled to be with you for this awesome experience of cheese and charcuterie, our cheese and meat class in a box. We are so proud of the selection that we have in front of us today and are just super thrilled to be with you.
Woo!
Whether that's daytime, early morning, nighttime, hey, it's cheese class on demand. It can be whenever you want it.
That's right. And if you know of us and already support us, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this cheese tasting experience and meat tasting experience. If you are new to this and wondering who the heck are these people I'm watching, well, we are a husband and wife team. We went on our honeymoons and quit our jobs. It was a little more detailed, like we're on our honeymoon on day 3 and you turned to me and said, I'm
going to quit my job when we get home. It was that was exactly like that.
And I said, what are you going to do? And you said,
something in cheese.
Literally, it happened just that way. And so 2 years and 5 days later, we opened the doors to our own Antonelli's Cheese Shop. You have kept up your, by trade, CPA, you're a certified public accountant, and John has kept the license up to date as our fallback plan. But here we are 12 years later and bringing cheese tastings to you in a whole new way. So why do we do this? Our whole goal is to make cheese and artisanal foods in general fun and approachable and take out the bougie pinkies up. I mean, hey, if that's your thing, bougie pinkies up. But the whole goal is that everybody can enjoy cheese. And in fact, it's made of, by, and for the masses. And so we want to kind of break that down, have fun with our food, learn how we taste, and just have a good time.
Yeah, and we've been doing icebreakers in our business for the last
Oh, you're going to throw me?
years.
Oh, no, okay.
And so what I want you to do, well, this is just a fun game if you choose to do it or not, is you go around the room and ask each other, if you were a cheese, what would you be? Or if you had a soul cheese, what would it be? And you just pause the video, go around.
Or if you had an island cheese, like you were deserted on an island, you could only eat one cheese the rest of your life. The reason we call it all those things is because if you ask John and I, what's your favorite cheese? We don't have one. We're going to give you a long roundabout answer like, what am I drinking? What's the weather like? Da, da, da. So it depends on what category. So I like to play what cheese would I be right now?
Right today.
Yes.
Do you want to go first or shall I?
I'll go first.
Go, enjoy.
If I was a cheese right now, I would be Oma, which we're going to taste today because it's a stinky washed rind cheese. We are in Texas. It is hot. It will be hot for the next few months. Many months of the year, and you know, you just feel particularly ripe, and it's part of our terroir and who we are. But that's
everybody still loves you.
Yeah, I might be a little bit pungent these days, but it's my favorite cheese. Not everybody loves a washed rind, but thanks, honey. Yeah. As long as you do.
Exactly. And if I were a cheese today, I'd be mozzarella. Mozzarella is a pasta filata. It's a pulled curd, and so running a small business, a mom and pop business, having 2 kids at home, constantly getting pulled in different directions, and so I would be mozzarella. So this is your opportunity. Pause. We'll be right back when you unpause.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Coffee talk.
All right.
Do you remember that SNL skit?
Yes,
okay.
I loved it.
John's like, yes, honey. All right. So if you were wondering,
send them back. Come on in. All right. Welcome back. Thanks for playing our game.
We hope that
you had fun.
This feels like to you what it is to us. We wanted to get chatty and conversational over cheese. As you can tell, we like to talk a lot. We like to eat a lot. We love to be together, and we love to build community and spread joy through cheese. So if you're sitting there wondering, well, wait, my plate did not just come out of the box like this, and you didn't know it, you can pause right now. There is a quick 10-minute video that just shows you how to plate all your items, but really you're just gonna follow the menus that were provided in your box, plate them around clockwise, and then the pairings are the ones that line up that go with it. We're gonna talk you through it, but sometimes that's easier than you trying to open during the tasting, is to at least have it all out. What else do we have in front of us? We like to have our mise en place for tasting. So, John, your crackers.
These are the little mini toasts. These are French style, crunchy, little baguette squares, I guess.
They're crackers, yeah.
I don't know, they're more than a cracker.
All right, so you got your crackers. We've got our Kiko's corn nuts, sourced from Spain.
These are sourced from Spain from our friends at Mitica, who get them from a Pedimax, a great family-run business on the east coast of Spain. They do our Marcona almonds, caramelized pecans, walnuts, and then these amazing giant corn nuts, which
corn nuts
are
unlike any other.
Heavenly.
We've also got our Peppadews. So why do we have Peppadews? Peppadew Peppers. These are not that spicy. They're more sweet and tangy. The only person I've said here they're too spicy is my mother-in-law. So for some of you, just proceed with caution. These were discovered in the 90s in Africa. So it's so cool to me that we're still discovering foods. We're also killing off a lot of foods, but we are at least still discovering new things that are edible. Why do we like pickled goods? Cheese is fatty and palate coating. Meat is fatty and palate coating in all the best ways. Don't let that scare you off. I mean, fat is flavor. But the Peppadews, the pickled goods, that acid will just cut through that fat and meld together and cleanse your palate and keep you coming back for more. Which also goes to our beverages. So John, today, if you are not drinking alcohol, you are having a sparkling water.
Sparkling water with mine tonight.
And I am having a gin and tonic. And so for both of us, bubbles. Bubbles are everything. We almost always have some sort of sparkling water because the effervescence of the bubbles picks those fats up off your palate, takes it back, cleanses, and leaves you wanting to come back for more as well. You can do all sorts of different drink options. If you are pairing wines or beers or ciders, or we've also done like Italian sodas and all of that, you just want to pair lighter flavor profiles with the first ones. So think of like light ales and pilsners and hef, or Sauvignon Blanc.
Saisons would be awesome.
Okay, we're going to be yes, and then like a Sauvignon Blanc or a rosé. Then you can move into the more medium bodies like brown ales, into Pinot Noir, and then you could end on the really robust like a stout or a porter or a quad, a big Cabernet Sauvignon. So just remember, like any tasting, if you start with the biggest flavor on your profile, that's what you're gonna taste the rest of the time. So you wanna start with the lighter flavor profiles. Oftentimes that means younger in age and I was gonna say age less. Younger in age and age less, that's the same thing. We'll just leave it there. But yeah, oftentimes they're lighter in color too. It just depends. But let's give it a go.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the peppers, which I think is awesome. I did want to just say these are name control protected peppers, and they are brined with a brine and a simple syrup, which is what gives it that sweetness. Definitely throughout the course of the tasting, we will tell you how to eat with those. It is so much fun, y'all.
So I think our tips and tricks, enjoy this how you want, but if you can, try to stay with us. It is a palate progression. What else did I want to say? Oh, the question we always get asked is, how do we represent these people? Where do we get these goods from? Do we make anything? And our whole goal is to support artisanal producers. So what does artisan mean? That's a buzzword. Like certain pizza joints that are chains and nationwide say that they are artisanal. Well, in one way, it just means touched by hands. And that's true. Those pizzas are touched by hands. But for us, often, there's no black and white, but it's not all machine fabricated. There's still people involved in the process. That cheese making and charcuterie curing are the process of art meets science. So you can't do the exact same recipe, same time, every single time, because you have to know the product and it changes. And what did the animals eat that day? And oh, the milk tastes different because the cows got into a garlic patch. And oh, the mold is not growing consistently here on my salami. I need to increase the humidity or move it in the aging chambers. So all of that is where the artisan nature comes into play. So yes, is it a buzzword out there these days? Of course, but we hope you get to realize like truly it is about the craft and the labor of love that goes into it, and the science meets the art and the know-how. So really, we search the world for some of our favorite products, for things that we love to eat. If we don't like it, we're not gonna ask you to eat it. I like to say, I like to sell anything I don't have to cook. I can just take home and put on a picnic plate. So for us, that's not only cheese and charcuterie, which, as you will come to find out, charcuterie does not mean cheese, y'all. A lot of y'all know that, but a lot don't. There's like some major trending on social media these days about charcuterie boards. Well, charcuterie, appropriately for this class, actually just refers to meat. And it is a French word that refers to the cookery of preserved meats, oftentimes in their own fats, in curing chambers, the fermentation of meats. And so charcuterie, as you know, cooked meat, charcuterie. Sorry for everybody who speaks French. I don't, and I have a Texas accent.
You're doing great though.
But that is what charcuterie refers to. So we do those, and then pickled goods, beer, wine, chocolates, all sorts of yummies. All right.
So I've been snacking on those corn nuts. So
you're not supposed to snack on them yet.
I think I should lead the taste
yes,
this
I'll
little
do it.
bit. What I want you to do, get your palate aligned, depending on what time of day you're doing this experience. Your palate may have shifted throughout the course of your eating. If you had a big giant jug of coffee or soda or certain lunches can really impact your palate. So what we want to do is kind of recalibrate, rebalance. And so what I want you to do, take this like Kendall, put it in the palm of your hand.
I'm like Vanna White with a cornet.
Throw it in your mouth and pinch your nose.
Pinch your nose first, then throw it out.
And get it in there. Keep your nose pinched and keep it closed. And what you're doing is isolating the tongue. You might get salty, and that's about it. And when you're like, oh, I really know what this thing tastes like, release your nose. And exhale out through the back of your nose. Make noises like that because it uses your nose. And
that was not why I was making that noise.
Well, might as well get people involved.
The light is on.
And so when it the aromatics travel across your olfactory, this retronasal action, boom, you get like Frito pie or really roasted popcorn. You get these amazing flavor profiles that are reminiscent of memories that you've developed over your lifetime. And so if you grew up in Texas where Frito pie is the thing, that's what you'll remember.
Rodeoing. I grew up rodeoing. Every weekend we had a lot of Frito pies.
And so, so these are just it's a delicious way to get your palate recalibrated. Pay attention to what's happening on your tongue. Salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami are the flavors that the tongue can pick up. And then the olfactory can pick up thousands and thousands more experiences. And so you really want to use both parts of your tasting arsenal.
Yeah. So taste plus aroma equals flavor. Oftentimes we just pop it in our mouth, shoot it down, and we forget and we think that's flavor. But you are only tasting 5 things on your palate. It's through the retronasal, through breathing out, it's with the aroma. So again, taste plus aroma, that's where flavor happens. So you should be eating this cheese plate ideally at room temperature. When cheeses are colder, you can't taste the full flavor and expression of it as much. And why? Because the aromas are tight and you need the aroma structure to open up and to smell it, and that will give you much more flavor. Thanks, John.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm pumped.
I think we should do this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel like they've earned it. You've earned it.
Yeah. Are you all ready to do this at 13 minutes in?
We've earned it.
We just really do this so we get to eat what we want to eat. So we have different classes, by the way. We have a Cheese 101, which talks about the 7 styles of cheese. And that's a pretty fun pairing because we do honey and chocolate and preserves and all sorts of different things. The only reason I say that is we're going to skip the first style of cheese, which are fresh cheeses. And we are going to go right straight to bloomy rinds. So I will introduce the style of cheese. Let's just go back and forth.
That sounds fun.
You know that even when we have a plan, I break the plan.
Well, let's do whatever plan you have in mind. While I eat another
there is a plan. All right. So our first cheese, before you dive in, let me just chat how I want you to eat it. Is Kunik. Kunik was the large hockey puck sized. And this has this beautiful white mold around the outside. So you can tell that this is a bloomy rind cheese because the outside blooms up like little cotton balls, but really it's this white rind around the outside. Classic examples are Brie and Camembert. Here in the United States, Humboldt Fog is a pretty well-known one. And this style of cheese often have this flavor profile for being vegetal, cauliflower, asparagus, broccoli cheese soup, sometimes a little bit mushroomy. A lot of that depends on the milk type milk type as well. But this mold on the outside derives from Penicillium camemberti. So when the liquid milk that's what milk is still in the vat, and you inoculate it with these cultures and these molds that will later, when it's in the aging chamber, bloom up like these little cotton balls, which you can pick off, pat down. Hopefully it does the work itself. And then as this cheese is aging, it's breaking down the proteins in the cheese. So it's working from the outside in. It's a surface ripened cheese. So you look at your piece, you can tell the very inner paste in mine is like a chalkier, denser. Then there's this like more buttery, like I can almost scoop it out around underneath the rind. That's called the cream line. And then the rind itself. So if this cheese aged a little bit longer, it would be creamier throughout. If it was younger, it would be chalkier throughout. So that's what's pretty cool. Like a Brie you eat, it's creamy all the way throughout. It's super flat so that rind to paste ratio breaks down all those proteins. So when you have a bite of this cheese, and we play with our cheese, I want you to first just try a bite out of the middle.
Just straight from the core of that cheese.
Try that first, then try a bite with just that cream line, and then add in the bite with the rind. And what's cool is you're getting basically 3 different cheeses in one. This cheese is Kunik. It comes from Meadow in New York.
In New York, in Johnsburg, New York, a little tiny town about 3.5 hours north of Manhattan. Sheila and Lorraine have been making cheese there for a very long time. I love this cheese because in the summers when I was a kid, I grew up outside New York, we would go to Johnsburg, which is a town of population like 6, and we would spend a week or so in a cabin. And so finding a cheese of that place, of that terroir, really brings something special to my soul. But Sheila and Lorraine are really incredible. They are animal sanctuaries, so they allow animals onto the farm that would otherwise not have a home somewhere else, injured or older, and they let them live out their days on the land, which is really special because not every producer will do that.
Yeah, especially, again, there's no bad guy and good guy because we don't think everything in life is that clear cut. But some of the big ag, once an animal stops milking, that animal really has no use anymore because they're not producing milk. And so they go to the feedlot or to sell, to be done with for their purpose. Lorraine and Sheila actually keep all those animals on, which is amazing. So cool. Because they're paying to feed them without getting any revenue, but they figure these girls work for us all their lives, we're gonna let them live out. And so they have like one-legged chickens. I don't know how that works, but they have chickens and donkeys and all of their goats and really this animal rehab that they let run around to live out their days in peace.
And this cheese is a very special cheese. In the United States, this is one of the best examples of a triple creme. So this is actually goat's milk with cow's cream added into it. So triple creme has they add cream into the milk to elevate the butterfat content. So this is as close to butter as cheese will ever get. So you get the tanginess from the goat's milk, the acidity, and then you get this sort of buttery cream component from the cow's milk mixed with that Penicillium camembert. You get a little funk, a little vegetal. This is definitely
so
a shop,
buttery right now.
Yeah, this is definitely a shop staple. This tastes like butter.
It's rich.
So good.
A good little salt content on it. Now, what I taste, you may not taste because, as we said, this comes as a little round. So you are 100%, whoever you are watching this, tasting a different wheel than I did because this wheel was eaten and consumed by us. But artisan cheese, what's cool about it is it can vary from batch to batch. So the goal by an artisan cheesemaker is that every spring, the cheese is consistent and more or less tastes the same, but it will change flavors throughout the season, depending on what the animals are eating, where they're at in their lactation cycle. So if we pause real quick, the major contributing factors to what flavors a cheese or how flavors develop in cheese are the species of animal. Is it cow, goat, sheep, water buffalo, yak, camel, horse? And as John mentioned, goat's milk cheeses are known for being tangy, acidic, sometimes citrusy, zesty. Cow's milk cheeses are known for being really buttery, but also grassy and can be the most versatile. So what's the species? 2, what is the breed of animal? And yes, so different sheep make different flavor and qualities of milk. Same for cows. Like Holstein cows make a lot of milk, but there's not very much fat content in it, so it's not as good for cheese making because you need that fat matter there, versus Jersey cows or Montbéliard who have much higher fat content, but they produce less milk. So what's the species, what's the breed? And lastly, where we started this conversation at, what season is it? So are they eating the first spring grasses in Texas? Are they eating summer wildflowers? Is it in Wisconsin and spring still is covered in snow and they're not eating any grasses yet? So it all depends on what their diet is, and that will also affect the composition of the milk. All right.
Yeah, and so with this Kunik, I stuffed a little bit in the Peppadew pepper because that's what you do with a Peppadew pepper. You stick stuff in it.
And one thing we forgot to say, try to save some back because it'll be fun to mix and match later and do that. So perfect. We have our meat pairing.
So our first meat pairing of this is
look how beautiful
prickly pear Lomo that's been sliced. So this comes from Texas Iberico. This is
look at that beautiful translucent. Oh, I love it. Yeah,
give it a smell. The umami on it though.
If you haven't touched anything yet, you're doing it wrong.
It's wonderful. And so this is from Ashley Martin's Trail End Ranch. So Ashley Martin is a 3rd generation rancher here in Texas, in Comfort, Texas, small town about 4 hours west of Austin. And he's been a rancher for a long time. And what he ended up doing, which is pretty amazing, but in 2013, for the very first time, Spain released some of their heritage Iberico, their prized pigs, the genetics that they've developed over a very long time.
Which have been around since like cavemen. Like there are pictures of Iberico hogs in caves from cavemen.
So and
they held on to it and they wouldn't release it. Okay, so, back to you.
Yeah, and so they, in 2013, Ashley Martin was able to secure breeding stock of these animals to bring into the United States and actually start a lineage here. The Spanish felt like the hill country in Texas was a good representation of what the climate was like in the central part of Spain. And so now Ashley Martin is getting this chance to develop stock for himself. And Ashley partnered with some other folks, including Spotted Trotter, a company in Georgia, to actually do the curing of some of the meats that these
Chef
hogs,
Kevin is doing this curing.
so these hogs make some of the best meat on the planet, particularly if you've had jamón ibérico in Spain. It's amazing. It's life-changing.
But why is that meat well known? What do they graze on, John?
Oh, I don't know. Do you want to talk about it while I eat?
Well, jamón ibérico is known for grazing. I don't know, maybe you said this, but on acorns. And that acorn and dehestra, like out grazing in the forest land on acorns, pasture land, not forest land, pasture land. And so that is mimicked right here in Texas, and that acorn makes for this really sweet, nutty meat. Go ahead and pick it up. If you are scared of eating fat, I ask you to just try a little bite. I'm not a person who likes a lot of fat on a steak or whatever, but this is different and it's so delicate. I get that prickly pear since
let it melt on your tongue. So Kevin at Spotted Trotter really likes to use the flavors of the region. He's based out of Georgia, but for the animals, he asked Ashley, he's like, so what do they typically eat? And they went through the list, and prickly pear is one of the things that these hogs will eat. She said, oh, let's do that. I haven't seen anything else with prickly pear on it in the charcuterie world. And again, this meat is just so special. They call these types of hogs olive trees with 4 legs because it's healthier meat for you because of the way that they're grazing and they're eating. They have a very varied diet. And it's easier to digest too. And so anyway, it's spectacular.
The thing we had to note as before we put it with the pairing is this is Lomo, which means loin. So as we go through our little charcuterie 101 at the same time, charcuterie, you can have whole muscles or ground meat, or a few other variations, which we'll talk about. So this is a whole muscle. It means they take the whole muscle, that whole loin, they dry rub it, and then they cure it and age it in their aging facilities. So you can see that as this beautiful whole piece of meat. Prosciutto would also fall in this category. It's tasting delicious.
It's so good. This was a good food winner in 2021. So just recently was announced as a winner. Do you want to talk about Good Food?
Yeah, Good Food Awards out of California are trying to shine a light on producers and foods that are tasty, authentic, and responsibly made. So they have a whole way that they explain that and that you have to meet those classifications. But yes, hooray for being an award winner. Kunik has won multiple awards. And what I like about this, after we had the Kunik, I thought, oh, it's so rich. We're going to lose the loin. And the loin is equally decadent back. And so I get both of them. Did you try it together yet?
It. Yeah, I thought it was a really great pairing. And
they make a little sandwich roll up here.
The meat has a really big depth to it. It's not like a shallow flavor. It's like a really dark, deep flavor. And I quite loved it. And again, there's a little paprika, hint of cayenne, and then the prickly pear on the outside. Kevin at Spotted Trotter is an outstanding producer, and these Texas Iberico products, we're one of the distributors for it here in Texas. So look for it. It's amazing.
All right, that was a pretty decadent bite. I'm gonna palate cleanse with a little Peppadew, with my little gin and tonic, and I'm gonna dive right into our second cheese. So as I'm looking, I'm like, ooh, this is a pretty big second pairing. So hopefully we'll have to do some palate cleansing after we get through with this one. Our second style of cheese that we're talking about tonight are your washed rind cheeses. You know washed rinds because they have this sunset hue, so it's kind of orange, pink, or red, and they look kind of wet-ish, so wet looking. But most importantly, they are known because they stink. So, give it a little smell factor.
You're gonna love it.
Just like the last category of bloomy rinds that are surface ripened, these are washed rind cheeses that are also surface ripened. So again, we're creating an environment on the outside that affects the way the inside matures and ages. Except the last category is mold on the outside. This one, you want the most predominant thing to grow to be bee linens or Brevibacteria linens. They are what make it orange looking and funky. So you get that by washing these cheeses. Literally, they get a rag or a brush more often, and they dip it and wash it in a brine solution, so just a saltwater solution, or beer or wine or cider or Marc de Bourgogne. What that does is creates an environment that's so acidic that no other molds and spores can really grow and be prolific there, with the exception of these bacteria, these bee linens. So liken it, for better or for worse, to like having a great workout, dropping your sweaty clothes in the corner, leaving them there a day or two. They're gonna develop their own funk. That is what you are intentionally trying to do in this cheese.
That's what you want.
Why? Well, it makes this amazing flavor that is meaty, bacony, woodsy, really hearty. And this tradition, you want to talk about where the tradition comes from?
Yeah, so the tradition comes from...
I'll give you 5 seconds of airtime.
The tradition comes from Trappist and Cistercian monasteries around Europe. Oftentimes, they were sort of the hub of these towns for agriculture, for food, so producing beer and wine and vinegars and cheese and bread and a lot of things that use yeasts and bacteria and other things. And so having mold in an environment like that can be very detrimental overall to the other products. And so instead of, they would be rubbing the outside with one of their beers or with one of their wines or with some of their vinegar to try to kill that mold. And what happened is this bacteria is just globbed on, loved it, and the cheese was delicious. The cheese was amazing, and it tastes like meat during Lent. That's a pretty good thing when you're not eating meat. So this is an amazing cheese. This one is called Oma. So this is from our friends up at the Von Trapp farmstead.
Yes, those Von Trapps.
Yeah, the famous.
The hills are alive with the sound of, no, how about smell? The hills are alive with the smell of Oma.
Oma, that was awesome. And so Oma translates to grandmother in German. So this is named after their grandmother, not because she smelled, but because she was the one that founded the farm over 50 years ago. And so it's an homage to her.
Homage to Oma.
This is an organic cheese, which is really great. Organic milk. They've got about 50 Jersey cows. And they partnered with Jasper Hill Farm up in Greensboro, northern part of Vermont. And it's a pretty amazing thing. A partnership developed where the Jasper Hill really was able to get this cheese into the bigger markets around the country. So we're very blessed that we get to have a cheese like this on our counter, thanks to partnerships with folks like Jasper Hill.
Yeah, they really helped revitalize the local economy. Brothers Mateo and Andy Keeler were like, people are leaving and fleeing the Greensboro area. How do we support this local economy? They tested a few different models and decided to make cheese, and have really revitalized the area, have created so many jobs, and then really changed the cheese scene because they were purchasing cheese from makers early on before they had sales to the public. They were aging it for them and then making the sales. And they've won multiple awards for their aging caves. If you can ever go visit them, it's fantastic. So one thing I always get asked, to eat the rind or not? And I will say that a rind is a terrible thing to waste.
No rind left behind, y'all.
Be kind to your rind. So all of that is to say, give the rind a try. If you like it, eat it. If you don't have to eat it. It does, to be on a cheese, have to be by the FDA approved to be eaten. And cheesemakers are really split down the community of, yes, that rind is part of the cheese. I helped grow it. It's what gives it flavor. Eat it. Or no, that's just what's protecting the outside. I will say in these softer, younger cheeses, it really is intended to be eaten, because if you cut off the rind, you're really cutting off most of the cheese. So oftentimes it's the harder cheeses where sometimes people will take off that really hard rind. But again, try it. The rind is gonna have the most aggressive or assertive flavor. When you try the rind of this one, you're gonna get a little bit of those crunchies. That's just from that washing up from it. But anyway, I definitely got that bacony, woodsy, stinky mouthfeel, and we are going to fight stink with a big flavor.
Every second of this.
Big flavor with big flavor, and we are going to Induja.
This is a Calabrian specialty. So Induja, it's an amazing, this is from Tempesta Artisans in Illinois. So we bring in a couple of their products, their Waifu beef salami, and this Induja. So this is like, consider a spreadable salami is what they call it. It's an amazing concoction of meat and peppers. And Calabria is an incredibly important place for peppers. Calabrian peppers are hot and spicy and a delicacy. And so oftentimes they're really overwhelmingly hot. And so, you know, they package them in little cartons that look like firecrackers or bombs because of the intensity. What Tempesta really does here is they help give you the flavor and the experience of those peppers without the overwhelming spice. My ancestors came from Calabria, so this product is near and dear to my heart. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll take trimmings from prosciutto and actually use those within the make process of this to give it a deeper flavor profile.
And sometimes a way to use the scraps and the whole pieces, yeah.
Or you can, anyway, you're gonna get these chunks of pepper in there. You get that good spice. It's warm on the palate.
The maker is Antonio Fiaque. When I put the two together at first, I was like, oh no, the Nduja completely overwhelms the cheese. What's cool about it is you wait for it, and the cheese comes back through, the funkiness of that cheese. And then the very lingering thing I'm getting is that heat. You may be wondering, why aren't Kendall and John putting everything on a cracker? Well, because I actually think
the cheese really stands out.
Yeah, it does. It totally came back. And then especially on the, got that kiss me baby stink to it.
Love it.
So we don't put anything first right on a cracker, because then when you eat it, what's on your palate is the cracker, and you taste the cracker most. So we always taste things first naked or in the buff.
And sometimes if you think one of the flavors is going to overpower the other, you want to put that flavor on your tongue first. And so like I use sushi, for example. Oftentimes if you have a super delicate piece of fish on rice, if you put the rice in first, it's going to experience like rice. But if you put the fish side down, you're going to get that fish flavor first.
I remember when we learned that we were always eating sushi the wrong way, and it should be fish side
for
first.
that restaurant.
So yeah, I totally enjoyed that. I got the texture of those dried peppers in there on the Nduja.
And this is 100% Berkshire pork.
And if you have some textural weirdness to this, this is a great little appetizer to put out and just on these little crostinis, on these little toasts, putting a dollop and spreading it on there, and it's like an easy, delicious bite. Okay.
That's two really great pairings.
2 down, 3 to go. Doing good, team. Okay, so we've done 2 soft ripened cheeses, a washed rind and a bloomy rind. It's like, where am I going with this, Kendall? Now we're gonna move into the semi-soft and firm and hard categories. So as we go into those cheeses, the things to know about texture, clearly it's self-descriptive. It's semi-soft, so it can bend without breaking. It's firm, you can start to bend it, but then it breaks. And then hard, you can't bend at all, so like a Parmigiano Reggiano. And why does that even matter? Well, it does matter. 1, just what you like to enjoy, but 2, what are you gonna do with it? So semi-soft cheeses are pliable because they still have a lot of moisture in them, so that gives them still that elasticity. These are great for melting. So grilled cheese, mac and cheese, fondue, you want semi-soft and to firm. A hard cheese has, as it ages out, it keeps continuing to lose more moisture. It will start to taste saltier, and they don't melt very well. If you think of a Parmigiano Reggiano or a really hard Pecorino Romano, you just grate it over pasta and it just kind of warms up and dances, but it doesn't melt into it. You couldn't make a fondue out of Parmigiano Reggiano. And that instead is providing those little kind of like salt crystal bites. That has to do, as we said, with the aging of it and how you make it. So the quick how you make cheese process, you've got a vat of milk. It could be this big, it could be this big, it could be this entire room. You inoculate it with the cultures, kind of the DNA of how you want this cheese to grow into being a cheddar or a Gouda or whatever it is. You may add a little rennet, and the rennet will help coagulate it, because basically making cheese is the process of separating the liquids from the solids, the curds from the whey. So that rennet will help start to coagulate it and turn that milk from liquid into more of a custard flan-like texture. Then you go cut the curd and take a little knife or these big paddles with wires go around. And as soon as they cut that curd, they're cutting like cubes, it expels all this liquid. So if you want to make a semi-soft cheese, you want those curds to be big and beautiful and plump and walnut size. If you want to make a Parmigiano Reggiano, you're going to cut them all the way down to little rice kernels. Then you're going to scoop them out and push and expel all of that out, like kind of through a flour press, because moisture is not your friend when you are aging cheeses, as well as meats at the same time. So aging and fermentation is about the control of those, the control and spoilage of a product, but of that moisture loss. So this is one of our favorite cheeses. It is the first cheese we ever knew we were gonna carry in our shop. And John, without further ado, give it to me, baby.
Oh, so irati. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so irati.
So this is a cheese that just makes my heart happy when I eat it. This is from the part of France in the very southwestern part, and it's right in the Basque Country. So it comes from the Oso Valley and the Irati Forest. It's a very old recipe. So these cheeses were made slightly different shapes, but using similar animals because this, you know, the farmers passed on this recipe and this tradition all around this region. And eventually in 1980, they decided, France decided it was a really important product, and they wanted to name control it, AOC, and basically put some rules around the process of making this cheese so that these farmers, these cheesemakers, they were protected, the economy of the region was protected, and there couldn't be any copycats around the globe. Champagne is an amazing example of that type of product. You can only make champagne in a very particular region, in a very particular method, et cetera, et cetera.
Even though a lot of people call anything that's a sparkling wine a champagne, it's technically a very specific thing.
So the earliest record of cheese making was from the 1st century of this cheese of Oso Irati. I love the texture of it. I love the mouthfeel, the flavor. Kendall and I got to go visit Onetik, the cheesemaker. It's a co-op, and so we got to visit the cheese making part of the company, and then we got to go visit the main farmer, who he's just the head of the organization of farmers or ranchers or dairymen, and got to go see the sheep. And it's an amazing part of the world because they're not huge herds. They're small herds dotted all over the countryside. Lots of families doing it. Lots of companies making the cheese. Onetik is our favorite version of it. It goes well with so many flavors. Sheep's milk is that really buttery, rich. Yeah,
something just as a note that when you're comparing apples to apples, let's say you go buy certain cheeses at big box stores and you're like, oh, Oso Irati, I see it at fill in blank here. Just note there are different producers, and so some are smaller, some are larger. There's different co-ops, and so always pay attention to, even for like Pecorino, Parmigiano Reggiano, there's certain factories and where you are known for making it different ways. And so a small cheese shop like ours is trying to intentionally source those depending on flavor quality. Yeah, John, as you pointed out, this is our first sheep's milk cheese. So sheep's milk is known for being the richest. It's the fattiest of cow, goat, and sheep. It is decadent. It's nutty as it ages out. This one has this beautiful natural rind, so definitely give it a little bite.
I love this rind.
This is what this cheese looks like just as you continue to rub it down, pat it off, maybe have rubbed a little bit of salt, a quick salt bath when it was younger. But this is just what natural ambient cave is.
It's lemony tonight.
Is it?
Earthy and lemony. I loved it. I love this
especially
rind.
Good if you're with beer or if you're drinking, starting to have some more bolder reds. And tonight we paired this with a
sopressata from Oli in California. So Oli, the salami itself is quite different from the previous one. The previous one has more moisture in it, or the way they created the texture creates that spreadability. Oftentimes that's because they've shredded down a dry cured salami already, so they can, or a dry cured prosciutto or something with the fats and things. So it's not raw meat going into the product. Here, the raw meat goes into the casing with the fat, and in the world of charcuterie and salami making, you can choose as a maker the size of the fat amounts, the thickness, the round shapes, however, and then the ratio to the raw meat.
Yeah, you've probably, when you've just eaten a stick of salami, never looked at that, but now start noticing like how much, what's the ratio of fat to meat. How big is each? Some, like we used to slice when we were first learning, certain big format salamis, really thin on a slicer, but the fat all flies out. And then we were taught by a charcuterie maker, like, no, you need that to stay in there. You should be cutting that thicker. So just always looking at every one of those as an artistic decision that a producer makes depending on how they want that to taste and to look.
Yeah, and this sopressata is flavored with garlic and black pepper. It's super flavorful. It leaves a really nice palate finish on the end, and paired with the cheese, it's outstanding. This is a really amazing. So Oliveria was born in 1978 to a family in Rome that had been making salumi in Rome for over 100 years. And in about 2010, he's like, I'm gonna try to go make it on my own. So he moved to the East Coast and started producing under the Ali Salumi brand. and had a lot of success with it. So much so that he needed to get more space and get better at it. So he moved to California, got a 20,000 square foot or an 80,000 square foot, huge space to start producing larger quantities. He works with about 100,000 pounds of salumi a week. And so anyway, so
we have seen him grow just in the 10 years that we have been operating.
So this sopressata osso combo.
So what I like about this is if anything is too adventurous or too much for other people, these are amazing. This sopressata and this osso rati are great to have at a party where you want people who have sophisticated palates to enjoy it. Like the osso rati has a great story, but you also want something that just everybody can eat without thinking about it, and everybody loves. Smile. Yeah, even people who don't like cheese and meat. And so this is a classic pairing to do that. This osso rati, everybody loves, but it's funky enough that you hit all angles, and then that sopressata salami is just easy to take down.
That is so good.
Yeah, it's easy. Don't have to overthink it. They're compared to the last one where you're fighting that big flavor with big flavor. This one you're actually matching the subtlety and the nuance in both and seeing what you can pick out. All right, so awesome. We are moving from France over to France. Excuse me, y'all. That's just where I am today.
That's where you're
okay, we are moving from France, or Basque Country, I should say, over to Italy. And we are going with our first 100% goat's milk cheese. And this is Pantaleo. You want to tell us about Pantaleo?
Yeah, I was going to take another bite, but I will slow down for this moment. So Pantaleo, this is a cheese. We mentioned the brand Mitica earlier when we were talking about the corn nuts. So Michelle Buster is a friend of ours. They started Mitica in the 70s, her and her partner, focused on sourcing the finest of anything they could get in the world of food from Spain and Italy. Often focused around Pecorino Romano as the starting point and then building from there. And so they've always been on the lookout for really astonishing cheeses that are made in a, in an old-fashioned way and made with love. And so this is Pantaleo. Pantaleo comes from Sardinia. So Sardinia, what's super cool about Sardinia is that it is often in many places like craggly, rocky area. Most often have a lot of sheep on the island, but in this case, goats. And the goats are foragers, so they'll go looking for different flavor profiles and different things. And when the grasses and the weeds and the vegetation has a hard time to grow, they become much denser, much more thick and rough, and that lends flavors. And so Pantaleo is this really nice aged goat's milk cheese. You don't see a lot of aged goat's milk cheeses done well because the tanginess can really take over and be unpleasant. This one's aged at least 100 days.
What I love about it, and give it a taste, is that you see how something that's normally really minerally and tangy and acidic when it's young also takes on this sweetness as it ages out, and this kind of caramel butterscotch note. Just this, it's not even that really, but it's this, you do get this sweetness starting to come through on a well-aged goat milk cheese. This one, I don't as much eat the rind or enjoy it. I think it has like a thin coating on the outside, but it's always fun to try and just see how it's different, and especially just from the middle all the way up to right under the rind, how it tastes.
And this cheese tonight is super herbal. That's the beauty. Like, the animals just eat really good things, and you get a lot of herbs and a lot of really amazing flavors.
Yeah, which is why we are pairing this with an Italian style meat, but made stateside in New York.
From Brooklyn Cured. So this is Braziola. You might be looking, man, why is it like dark purple?
It's another whole muscle. You can see like the Lomo.
It's made in similar to a prosciutto, but it's air cured beef, which it's not beef jerky. It's much more delicate. This is a specialty of Italy, and it's really rare to find it in the U.S. because from a charcuterie perspective, you have to have a different license, I think, to work with different meats, different animals.
It's often also much pricier.
Much more expensive. And so Scott, the owner, founder of Brooklyn Cured, has been making charcuterie for 15 years, started the company in 2010, 11 years ago, and chose this as one of his staples to make. And in Italy, we often sell this on a bed of arugula, like a slice on a bed of arugula with parm shaved on top and olive oil drizzled. And it's got just this amazing,
a great way to make a fancy looking salad that isn't hard. Yeah, and just eating this like wrapped around arugula with like a drizzle of really good olive oil with it.
There's no hormones, no antibiotics, like a lot of this stuff works.
And it's rubbed in spices and herbs. So we paired these two together to mimic that herbaceousness. And actually the herbs on this go really well with my gin and tonic. Juniper. I was like Ginepro. That juniper kind of coming through from the outside.
Really happy with how this one came out. I was worried the beef was gonna overpower, but man, that is a good piece of.
All right, we're supposed to switch off who gets to eat and who gets to
it's
talk.
Just good, though.
I know, now you can tell we're both just into eating.
No, it's so good.
All right.
That was amazing. Thank you for choosing that pairing, honey.
Yeah, you're welcome. I switched this one up last minute. I wanted to also, usually in charcuterie, the most accessible quick things that we see are pork products. And so it was important tonight to be able to offer some non-pork products like beef. The other charcuterie products that you should try that aren't as easily accessible for this, but we're working on being able to portion out smaller sizes, is like duck rillettes or duck confit, pate and mousse. Those are different textures and sizes and ways of making charcuterie.
Elk, it's charcuterie, deer. You can get some really amazing flavor profiles.
We have a goat salami that I look forward to featuring. So yeah, and each one of those, just like the different breed of animal or species makes for a different milk flavor. Clearly, the animal type, as we all know, makes for a different charcuterie experience.
Amazing,
all right,
though.
I think that takes us up to our last one.
These have been home runs.
Y'all are doing great, y'all.
I'm really happy with this.
Okay, so we are moving to dun dun dun, your polarizing blue cheeses. So if you don't like blue, hang with us. You can do it, people. You can do it. Blue cheeses, I was gonna say get a bad name. I don't know anybody who talks bad about them, but we're often just all used to those ubiquitous blue cheese crumbles that come on a house salad at a steak restaurant. Those are all fine and dandy, but they don't show the nuance and the full spectrum of what blues can be. So you can have really creamy, young, fudgy blues. You can have really aged, earthy, dank. Well, you can have slappy on the face blues. Some of that is what we call piquant or like hot flavors versus cooling flavors. A lot of times blue cheeses are known for being salty, like that's one of the major flavor profiles you get. So how does a blue cheese become blue? I think some of our customers have been like, ooh, that's gross. Well, I'm like, you know that all cheese has some sort of mold on it, right? But it's not just these. But the way that these get this specific molding on them is when you go back to the liquid vat, the milk that's in the vat, you inoculate it with something a mold that derives from Penicillium roqueforti, Roquefort being the first blue cheese that we knew about. And then when the cheese is later in the aging caves, you go and you pierce it. And when you pierce it, that oxygen is hitting that mold, and that mold is aerobic, and that is what is allowing it to vein or to develop these parsley striations, and they'll be blue and green and yellow. So you can actually have blue cheeses that you never pierce, and they have that Penicillium roqueforti or derivation of mold strains in them, but they just aren't allowed to vein since it hasn't touched oxygen. And you can have some that just a little bit, some all over. If you look at your piece, I don't think I'll be able to pick mine up, but you can see little pin pricks depending on how you cut it, or little stripes, and that's where you can see that cool needle went straight down and it allowed it to mold right along there. Up. All right, take us through this blue, honey.
So this is the original blue from Point Reyes Farmstead Creamery. So the parents founded.
The stripe, y'all.
The parents founded the farm in 2000, along with their daughters, 4 daughters that got involved, the Giacomini family, that started to get involved with the cheese making facility. So this was their original blue that they started working with. They had about 450 Holstein cows that they were milking every day. And they really wanted to put their mark on the blue cheese category. It was open for business. Maytag Blue was sort of the largest of the blue cheese makers, and there were some others on the market, but nobody was owning it. And so they went for it, and they created this amazing, milky, creamy blue cheese. There's 2 types of blue flavors, that spicy and the cooling. Let's taste this one tonight. What do you think?
It's cooling. It's cooling. It is an assertive blue, but it's cooling. So to me, what force comes through is that texture, that creaminess, then that salt. I loved it today. It's tasting exceptional.
It's a lovely raw milk cheese. And so they, we had, let's see, I'm looking at the menu. This is our first raw milk cheese. So the others were all pasteurized, which means that the cheesemaker they heated the milk either long and slow or a little bit more fast and at a higher temperature. Long and slow. Did I say long and slow? Long at a lower temperature.
Also
I can catch myself. There's a couple different ways you can classify pasteurization. So one is a long period of time at a low temperature, or a high temperature for a shorter period of time. And so the cheesemakers can decide how they want to do it. Pasteurization is part of the process. Some cheesemakers prefer it. Others, by law, if they're making young cheeses like Kunik, have to do it. But then you get the choice of doing raw milk. And a lot of the raw milk cheesemakers will talk about how those microbes, the natural ambient things that exist in and around their facility, is the terroir that ultimately makes their cheese taste the way it does. And so by pasteurizing it, not only are you killing the bad things, but you're actually killing some of the good things as well. And so it doesn't guarantee that you're gonna have an amazing cheese if it's a raw milk cheese, but you can have an amazing cheese if it's a raw milk cheese. And so this is a very special product.
Award-winning as well. Now run by the 4 sisters, the Giacomini sisters. So women power. And really trying to make their mark in being good land stewards, animal husbandry, good practices and stewards.
Yeah,
and
they've got a little restaurant on site if you ever go. Point
beautiful
Reyes,
to visit.
just north of San Francisco, in one of the prettiest places on the planet.
And today we paired this out of Oregon with Olympia Provisions, made by Elias Cairo, another great award winner. And this is his Flaco Paco, or Skinny Kyle. Pepperettes, so think of pepperoni, but in a small little easy hiking, munching
It's like
form.
put this in your pocket and it's going to be fine later today. That's what salami was invented for. It was invented for the Roman army to carry them around onto the battlefield. Cheese too was used in that way. It was something that can be stored in the pocket and eaten later. So this is
all fermented foods. Like how can we feed the masses without refrigeration
safely
and transporting?
And so this is a smoked sausage with paprika and garlic. It was a 2015 Good Food Award winner. Elias Castro, he's an amazing, his heritage is Greek, but he makes and chooses ingredients from kind of a global sense.
Ooh, I didn't get a lot of heat when I was eating it, but now that I'm breathing out afterwards, I'm getting some heat. One of the cool things he does when we got to go tour his facility is he said, as they've been scaling and growing, one of the places they looked is they were like, well, we're really taking too long in curing and drying all of our own herbs. So let's use some pre-dried herbs. And they started using them and he was like, it's just not as good, y'all. And they did a blind taste test and all this. And they're like, okay, but is it that much better for us to cure or to dry our own herbs? And they decided, yeah, it's that much better. So they do the whole process themselves, which slows everything down and is much more labor and resource intensive. But I think that goes to speaking to what all these are, and what's magical about them is they're known as slow foods. So foods that it takes time to build flavor, that you can't rush it, and that whole art meets science. And we are part of and support the slow food movement, which supports food similar to the Good Food Awards sprang out of inspiration from the slow food movement, but the slow food movement supports foods that are good, clean, and fair, and it talks about that. And so what is your animal husbandry? Are you practicing regenerative and sustainable land practices so that our land is here for generations to come? And all of those practices that go into making this amazing, delicious food. And I think that takes me to what our mission is. Yeah. You heard us tonight say, oh, we met this person in Spain, or oh, we went out and saw them in California. And while that has come to be a perk of the job, it certainly was not. We were so naive when we started the business and thought, oh, we're gonna travel and eat cheese. And they were like, we'll never have a vacation day off. So now fast forward a dozen years and we are very fortunate and we have an amazing team working with us that allows us to do it. But part of our do good, eat good mission is to see the products where they're made. And so we can personally pass on our knowledge to you saying, they claim to treat their animals well, we've seen it and we can vouch for it. So what does do good, eat good mean to us? It means supporting producers who make their foods in a way that's great for the land, good for the animals, treating their own teams well. And then when people spend their hard-earned dollar with us, we commit and vow to do all the same. So we give back through our monthly charitable cheese cause to a local nonprofit, serving on national boards, and lending whatever time, talents, and treasures we have to make the whole system go round. And that's our do good, eat good cycle. So thank you for supporting these different producers tonight. Just as a little recap, in case you wonder if you've learned anything, we tried 5 different styles of cheese, including 3 different milk types, cow, goat, sheep. We tried 2 different animal products, beef and pork. We tried 4
different styles.
4 different styles. Actually, all
Smoked,
5 were different
cured.
styles. Yeah.
Yeah.
And whole muscle versus
spreadable.
ground. So I hope that was a fun tasting.
I loved it.
What was your favorite tonight?
I've got like nothing left. I'm not going to make a decision. The sopressata and oso I think was spectacular. The Kunik and prickly pear was outstanding.
I think I'm gonna go Braziola and Pantaleo right now, but I also that ended well. So the point is, we liked it all. We hope you did too.
Yeah. Thank you, y'all.
Yep, we appreciate you. Thanks for supporting our Do Good Eat Good mission, and please don't keep us a secret. Spread the word.
Spread the word, and if ever you want to do a private event with us live, we are welcome and more than happy to do that. We ship all across the country and can even include people across the globe.
Yep, happy to do that live with you. And also know that we change these up every 3 months. So if you loved this and want to do it again, mark it on your calendar. In 3 months, we're gonna have a different one. And then you can also just go take one of our other classes right now. We've got cheese and honey, cheese and chocolate, and cheese 101, 7 styles of cheese. We appreciate you all. Thank you for supporting these labors of love and our Do Good Eat Good mission. With that, Kendall, John Antonelli, signing out. Bye, y'all.
Bye.